The sky above Novathal glowed red as plasma bolts scoured the horizon. Captain Syra Ray crouched behind a broken transport crate, her armor scorched and dented. All around her, soldiers scrambled toward the evacuation ramps, their faces pale with fear. The great spire at the colony's heart, usually a shining beacon of hope, now stood half-ruined, its star metal supports twisted like spent candles. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shards of debris into the air. Despite her own racing heartbeat, Ray's focus was fixed on the distance, on the faint, flickering light of the royal pavilion where the alien queen lay wounded. Ray rose quickly and dashed across the cratered courtyard. Evac shuttles lifted off in pairs, streaking upward to safety, while Xylari fighters dove in with ruthless precision. The air tasted of smoke and ozone. Behind Ray, a volley of energy bolts struck the wall, showering her with sparks. Yet she did not slow. Every fiber of her training told her to escape, but another part of her refused to leave. Somewhere beyond, the smoke and ruin, Queen Virisha of the Zhird waited. Orders had always been clear, no one left behind. That code mattered, even when the rest had fled. As Ray neared the shattered entrance of the pavilion, the ground trembled again. She ducked under a falling beam and pressed against the scorched stones. Through her visor's night vision feed, she saw movement. A lone figure slumped near the throne dais, limbs folded awkwardly. The queen's regal silhouette, tall, slender, with bioluminescent markings on her arms, was unmistakable, even in the flickering flames. Ray swallowed hard. Behind that figure lay an ancient promise. Humanity and Zhird had once fought together against a darker foe. If she abandoned Virisha now, all hope of alliance would die with her. Drawing a steadying breath, Ray raced inside. The corridors reeked of burning circuitry and spilled coolant. Overturned data consoles sparked like dying stars. She found the queen's chamber sealed by a fallen support strut. With a grunt, Ray heaved the metal aside, the beam scraping and screeching as it fell. Inside, the chamber's curved walls glowed with emergency lights, and in the center lay Virisha atop a low dais of crystalline stone. The queen's azure skin was smeared with dust and blood, but her eyes glowed faintly, still full of regal fire. Ray knelt beside her, scanning for life signs. The readings were weak but steady. Ray reached for the queen's slender arm. "Your Majesty," she whispered, voice muffled by her helmet. Gently, she touched Virisha's shoulder, feeling the quiver of breath beneath the thin armor. With effort, Virisha's eyelids fluttered. Telepathic words, soft and distant, filled Ray's mind. "Why do you save me?" Ray's hand tightened, resolve burning brighter than the fires outside. "Because my duty is to protect every life under my watch," she answered, speaking aloud. "No matter the cost." The queen's eyes shone with a mix of surprise and respect. Behind them, a sudden crash echoed as more Xylari troopers breached the outer hall. Ray pressed her back against a broken pillar, Queen Virisha in her arms. She unfastened the queen's holster belt and wrapped it around her shoulders like a makeshift sling. The queen whispered again, this time with wonder. "You risk all for me?" Ray leveled her plasma carbine at the doorway. "Everyone deserves a chance to live." A squad of enemy soldiers surged forward, their weapons spitting violet beam fire. Ray squeezed the trigger, 2 precise shots knocking the nearest troopers off balance. She grabbed Virisha and bolted for the rear exit. They emerged onto a shattered balcony overlooking the ruined plaza. Below, a single evacuation shuttle hovered, its loading ramp still down. The pilot, wide-eyed but determined, gestured frantically. Ray hoisted the queen into her arms and leapt for the ramp, just as a streak of plasma smashed into the balcony's edge. The metal groaned, splinters of stone raining down. Ray rolled forward onto the shuttle deck, landing hard but safe. The pilot slammed the ramp shut and the engines roared to life. Inside the shuttle's cramped hold, Ray set Virisha gently on an emergency cot. The queen's breathing was shallow but steady. Ray knelt beside her, removing her helmet. Her dark hair fell in damp strands around her face. Outside, the shuttle veered sharply to avoid incoming fire, then climbed toward the distant stars. Ray pressed her hand to her chest, feeling both relief and dread. The patrol ships would be after them, and Novatal was lost. Yet in that moment, with the Queen alive beside her, Ray knew that hope still lived. She would not let it die here in the shattered rampart. The shuttle's engines hummed as it drifted through the void. Captain Scifi Ray sat on a low bench opposite, the silver-hued figure of Queen Verisha. The cramped hold smelled of machine oil and filtered air. Only the soft hiss of life support disturbed the quiet. Outside the hull window, distant stars glimmered like scattered jewels against the black. Both soldier and sovereign waited in tense silence, their breaths echoing in the small cabin. Ray studied the Queen's shape through narrowed eyes. Verisha lay wrapped in a light blanket, her bioluminescent arm markings dimmed by exhaustion. Even injured, the Queen held an aura of grace. Ray wondered what thoughts flickered in the alien mind. Finally, Verisha spoke. Not aloud, but through the gentle threads of her telepathic voice. "Why do you risk your life for one who once stood as an enemy?" The question settled between them like a weight. Ray eased forward, keeping her own voice low yet firm. "My orders were clear," she said. "No one left behind, not friend or foe. You were hurt. I could not leave you." Fear and respect glinted in the Queen's mind, and Ray sensed that walls of suspicion wavered for the first time. Verisha's telepathic tone turned softer, almost curious. "Your kind values duty above all?" Ray nodded. "Duty, yes, but I also believe in mercy. Anyone can change, even us humans. Even you, Zerd, have shown kindness before." The Queen's glowing eyes flickered with surprise. She turned her head slowly, regarding Ray with new interest. A sudden jolt shook the shuttle as it dropped past a debris field. Ray steadied herself and reached out to secure the blanket around Verisha's shoulders. The Queen's fingers twitched, gripping Ray's sleeve. "Tell me of your people," Verisha urged. "Why do you save those who once waged war against us?" Ray drew in a breath and leaned back. She stared at the ceiling, recalling memories she had long kept private. "My home was once lost," she began. "A great war came to Earth many years ago. Hostile forces attacked our cities. We fought to survive. We learned that unity was our only chance. So humans joined hands across oceans and borders. We forgave old grudges to stand together." Verisha listened in silence. The only sound, her soft breathing. Ray continued. "Later, when we met your kind, we helped build your new colonies. We shared technology and medicine. For a time, we were allies." The Queen's mind pulsed with memory. Echoes of treaties and celebrations, of shared victories, and hopeful futures. "But something changed," the Queen said, her voice tinged with sorrow. "Our people learned the ways of war too well. We forgot why we fought that darkness once. We became what we had once feared." Her words trembled with regret. "I know," Ray replied gently. "I've seen my own people fall to the same mistakes. Power can blind us." The shuttle began a steady spin, aligning with a hidden slipstream corridor. Ray tapped a panel to activate the route map on the console. Tiny lights traced their path, through safe channels. Above them, the Queen followed the route with faint curiosity. "This corridor will lead us to your base?" she asked. "Yes," Ray said. "My fleet is just ahead. They will not attack us if they see you safe." A sudden ping alerted the pilot that a signal was incoming. A cold voice crackled through the intercom. "Shuttle Hydra 7, this is Lieutenant Morstan. You are ordered to stand down and surrender. The alien Queen immediately." Ray's jaw tightened. She recognized the voice of her former comrade. Beside her, Verisha stiffened, the blanket slipping from her shoulder. Ray pressed a finger to her comm badge. "Hydra 7 here," she replied, coolly. "I cannot comply. Queen Verisha is under my protection." Static hissed. "Captain Ray, you are under direct order. Failure to comply is mutiny." The shuttle shuddered as if struck by an unseen force. Ray's heart pounded. She exchanged a look with the Queen. Verisha's voice entered Ray's mind, firm and clear. "Do as you must. I trust you." Ray took a deep breath and turned to the pilot. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she ordered. The pilot's eyes widened, but he nodded. Steel settled in Ray's gaze. She knelt beside the Queen and offered her hand. "Stay with me," she said softly. With a sharp turn, the shuttle veered off the designated slipster. Eam. Engines flaring brighter as they sped into uncharted space. Outside, the stars stretched into lines of light as they dove into hyperspace. Within the cabin, Ray and Virisha sat side by side, bound by circumstance and a growing bond of trust. The silent truce they forged out of duty and mercy would test both their worlds, and perhaps save them both. In that moment of shared resolve, the human soldier and the alien queen became more than allies. They became proof that even the deepest wounds could heal when two hearts chose compassion over fear. The dark reaches of space awaited them, but Ray felt a spark of hope burning in her chest. As long as she held that spark, neither of them would be alone. Captain Sarah Ray guided the battered shuttle alongside the hushed hull of the Zerd flagship. Deep in an asteroid field, the ancient vessel drifted like a silent sentinel. Its star metal plating bore scars from centuries of battles. Panels flickered weakly, and long corridors vanished into darkness. Ray and Queen Virisha stepped through, the docking bay, each carrying hopes and fears. Behind them, the shuttle sealed and powered down. Here, cut off from both human allies and Xylari pursuers, they would find answers buried in memory. On the bridge, consoles glowed with pale blue light. Broken screens dangled from their mounts. At the center, a throne-like chair rose above a mosaic of worn tiles. Virisha sank into the seat, exhaustion heavy in her limbs. Ray remained standing, scanning the room for threats. No enemy ship had followed them here. For now, they were alone, soldier and sovereign in a tomb of old glories. Ray's voice was quiet but firm. "Your Majesty, this place holds your people's history. We can learn from it." Virisha's bioluminescent markings pulsed softly as she reached out with her mind. "Show me what you remember of your world's past," she projected. Ray nodded and moved to a nearby console. Her fingers brushed dust from its surface. The controls sparked, then hummed to life. A hollow projector rose from the center of the table. In midair, a hologram of crystal spires and soaring bridges appeared, an image of the Zerd homeworld in its age of peace. Ray studied the shining city. "This was before the Void War," she said aloud. "Your people stood with others against the darkness that came from beyond the rim." The Queen's eyes glowed brighter. "Yes," Virisha replied. "We remember the Reavers of the Void. They came like living storms, devouring stars." The projector shifted to show black tendrils swirling around a star, and fleets of sleek ships meeting them in battle. Ray's heart ached at the sight of worlds aflame, but she remained steady. The next image darkened to show the war's end. The Reavers lay broken, but Zerd shipyards glowed red with weapons of war. "In our fear, we turned those tools first against our old friends," Virisha confessed. "We remembered how easily we could be lost, and we sought power to protect us. Then our power became our prison." Ray looked away, recalling her own world's fall from grace. When the Omega Swarm attacked Earth, humans united in hope and bravery. They drove the swarm back, but in victory some leaders grew ruthless. Entire regions were sealed off in the name of security. Ray was a child then, hiding with her family in the rubble of a city they once trusted. More humans died in those purges than under the swarm's claws. Ray closed her eyes, feeling the old wound ache. Virisha's voice slipped into her mind, soft and steady. "I see your pain, human soldier. Our shadows are much alike." Ray opened her eyes. The Queen's face held sorrow deeper than any battlefield. "We both fought to survive," Ray said. "Then we fought to hold on to ourselves." She stepped closer to the hologram, running a finger through the floating light. "If my people had listened sooner, maybe fewer would have suffered." The projector shifted again, revealing a hidden chamber beneath the crystal city. Carved into its walls was an ancient prophecy. "When two hearts stand as one against the void, they will light the path to peace." Virisha leaned forward, studying the glowing text. This spoke of a warrior of another world, she said. One who would heal the rift between stars. Ray's breath caught. She stared at the words, feeling their weight settle in her chest. "But I am no hero," Ray whispered. "I'm just a soldier doing my duty." Virisha's slender hand reached out, fingers brushing Ray's. A gentle warmth flowed between them. Duty can be more than following orders. It can be the choice to do what is right, even when it is hard. The Queen's telepathic words filled Ray with quiet strength. Behind them, a distant rumble shook the ship. Ray and Virisha straightened, alert. The flagship's emergency lights blinked red, warning of incoming power fluctuations. A faded console alarmed, indicating a hidden reactor starting up. "Someone is here," Ray said, tightening her grip on her carbine. Virisha rose from the throne, regal even in fatigue. "Or something," she added. Together, they moved toward the source of the disturbance. Each step echoed through corridors of memory and promise. In shared silence, they carried the weight of two worlds, the burden of past mistakes and the spark of future hope. As they rounded a corner, lights flared and a squad of unexpected allies stood waiting. Human engineers and loyal Zhurd guards who had braved the void to follow them. Ray allowed a small, determined smile. Side by side with Virisha, she drew her weapon low, ready to defend the fragile alliance they had forged. In that moment, the soldier and the Queen knew they were no longer bound by old enmities. They were bound by trust, by shared sorrow, and by the promise of a brighter dawn. And together they would face whatever came next. The reclaimed corridors of the ancient Zhurd flagship hummed with cautious energy. Captain Syra Ray led Queen Virisha through dimly lit passages, her plasma carbine held ready. Small groups of human engineers and loyal Zhurd guards followed, their footsteps echoing on star metal floors. The ship drifted in the void, far from any charted route, safe for now from Xylari hunting parties. Yet the uneasy calm did little to settle hearts that still ached with old wounds. Ray guided the Queen to a secure chamber deep within the ship's core, a room lined with hollow maps and communication arrays. Here they could plan their next move. Engineers set to work repairing the flagship's comm system. Sparks flew and consoles flickered to life, casting dancing lights across Virisha's pale face. Ray watched them, grateful for every hand that answered her call. Allies were rare these days, especially when a human soldier and an alien queen traveled together. As Virisha sank into a cushioned seat, she reached out to Ray. "Your people trust you," she projected. "They risk their lives in this ghost ship." Ray gave a small nod. "They believe in more than orders," she said softly. "They believe in us." The Queen's bioluminescent markings pulsed gently, as if she too found comfort in their brief alliance. But before either could speak again, a sharp alarm cut through the still air. Red lights flared along the walls. A tense voice crackled through the revived comm line. "Hydra 7, this is Lieutenant Morstan. You are ordered to stand down and surrender Queen Virisha immediately." Ray's heart sank. The familiar voice of her old comrade carried over the speakers as if it were another incoming missile. Around her, engineers froze. Their hands paused, above tools. Virisha sat upright, her eyes narrowing. "He's come for us," she said, her voice firm. Ray tapped her comm badge. "Hydra 7 here," she replied with calm resolve. "Negative. I will not surrender the Queen." Static hissed. Then Morstan's voice returned, harsher this time. "Captain Ray, you are in breach of direct orders. This is your final warning." The speakers fell silent, leaving only the hum of repair work. Ray took a deep breath, exchanging a glance with Virisha. Betrayal burned in her chest. She had hoped her own side would understand. The captain stepped toward the doors, signaling her small force to assemble. "We move," she said quietly. "They want to take her by force. We will not let them." Engineers backed away, giving room to form a defensive line. Virisha rose, regal even in conflict. She placed her slender hand on Ray's arm. Be careful, human soldier. Ray met the Queen's gaze, feeling both fear and fierce determination. We will protect you, she promised. Moments later, heavy footsteps thundered outside. The airlock doors slid open, revealing a squad of human troopers led by Lieutenant Morstan. His uniform was crisp, his face stern. Behind him, soldiers aimed rifles at Ray and Varisha's small group. Morstan's eyes flicked to Varisha, then to Ray. Captain Ray, step away, he ordered. We do this by the book. Ray lifted her carbine, hands steady. Books won't help you now, she said. This is wrong. Morstan's jaw tightened. He raised his own weapon. Drop it, he said coldly. You're under arrest. Without hesitation, Ray fired a stun bolt which struck the floor, near Morstan's feet with a crackling flash. The squad dove for cover. Varisha's eyes glowed bright as she extended her hands, sending a wave of telepathic force that knocked soldiers off balance without harming them. Alarms blared as the rest of the ship locked down. Engineers scrambled to seal doors behind them, while Ray and Varisha moved as one toward a nearby transport bay. Morstan barked orders, but in the chaos his squad faltered. Ray kicked open a side door, revealing a small escape shuttle nestled in maintenance docks. She grabbed Varisha's hand. This way. Inside the shuttle, Ray and Varisha slid into pilot seats. Engineers hustled to secure the hatch. Ray's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating launch protocols. Red. Warning lights blinked. Man. Orstan's voice boomed through ship-wide speakers. By order of Command Fleet, you will not depart. Ray ignored him. She pulled a lever, and the shuttle's engines roared to life. The hatch sealed with a hiss. Outside the viewport, the flagship's docking clamps released. The shuttle lurched forward, slipping free into the void. Behind them, the ancient ship's hangar doors began to close, too slow to trap the fleeing craft. Ray punched the throttle, sending them hurtling. Way in the small cabin, Queen Varisha exhaled in relief. Her slender shoulders relaxed for the first time that day. Ray's brow was damp with sweat, but her voice rang clear. We're safe for now. The Queen reached out, placing her hand over Ray's. You risked everything for me again, she projected. I am honored. Ray allowed herself a tired smile. Through the shuttle's viewports, the distant glow of starlight turned to streaks as they jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the Zerd flagship faded into nothingness. Though hunted by human forces and chased by Zilari fleets, Ray and Varisha found strength in each other. Their bond, born of duty and strengthened by trust, would guide them through the darkest reaches of space. And somewhere in the uncharted void, they would find refuge, and perhaps the true path to lasting peace. The small shuttle shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace into an uncharted star system. Lights flickered inside the cabin, and consoles displayed warning signs. Captain Syra Ray's brow furrowed as she scanned the damage report. Power levels are critical, she said softly. The engines sputtered, life support groaned, and the shuttle's shields pulsed weakly. Behind her, Queen Varisha lay on a narrow bunk, pale and exhausted. Each breath she drew was shallow. Ray knelt beside the Queen and brushed a strand of Varisha's silver hair from her forehead. We'll fix it, Ray promised, voice steady despite her worry. She tapped a sequence on the main console. Sparks jumped, and a low hum rose as the auxiliary reactor coughed to life. The warning lights dimmed, but only momentarily. The core was unstable, and the system would collapse without a stronger power source. Varisha's bioluminescent markings glowed softly in the dim light. The Queen raised her head and met Ray's eyes. I can help, Varisha projected with effort, but I will pay a price. Ray looked uncertain. Your Majesty, you're too weak, she said. But Varisha sat up straighter, drawing on the last of her strength. The shuttle's cabling shifted as Varisha rose unsteadily. She placed her hands on the center console and closed her eyes. A soft blue glow emanated from her fingertips, spreading across the metal panels. Energy flowed from her body into the reactor, stabilizing the core. Ray watched, amazed as streaks of light traced the power conduits. The reactor's stable hum grew stronger, lights brightened, and the shuttle's shields glowed with renewed strength. Then Virisha's glow faded. She slumped forward, her strength spent. Ray caught her, lowering the queen gently to the floor. "Your Majesty," Ray cried, concern flooding her voice. Virisha's eyelids fluttered and she managed a faint smile. "It is done, human soldier. Your shuttle lives." But her limbs lay limp, her breaths shallower still. Ray lifted Virisha into her arms, cradling her as if she were a child. Every instinct in her cried out to find a safe haven, but the stars beyond the viewports told a different story. Sylari ships were closing in fast. A warning tone sounded, and Ray's visor lit up with contacts in pursuit. "Multiple hostiles, 3 o'clock, she said, rising to her feet. "They found us." Ray secured Virisha in a makeshift harness. Then she sealed the cabin door and hefted her carbine. The queen's soft breathing was the only sound amid the shuttle's alarm klaxons. Ray met the viewport's dark glass where fiery shapes drew nearer. Xylari fighters, sleek and deadly, dipped through the void. Ray's jaw set with resolve. She would protect Virisha with every breath she had left. The first boarding pod struck the hull with a jarring boom. Ray braced her boots against the deck as the pod's clamp locked. A hatch opened, and a cadre of Xylari hunters spilled into the cabin, weapons raised. Their helmets bore the chilling insignia of the Void Legion. Ray yelled a clear battle cry and exchanged fire with the nearest trooper. Energy bolts crackled between walls and consoles, sparking against the reinforced panels. Though the shuttle shook with each impact, Ray fought her way forward, using every practiced move. She ducked behind a support pillar and returned fire, the silence of space outside contrasting with the flash of battle inside. The Xylari advanced in disciplined formation, but they had not counted on Ray's ferocity, or on the Queen's power. As Ray held off the hunters, Virisha raised a trembling arm. With the last of her psionic strength, she sent a pulse of energy that knocked 2 attackers off their feet without harming them. The hunters staggered, weapons slipping from their grips. Ray seized the moment, rushing forward and disarming another with a precise strike to his weapon arm. The air was thick with tension and the scent of spent charge cells. One by one, the intruders fell back under Ray's steady aim and Virisha's gentle force. At last, the final hunter hesitated, then withdrew, guarding his wounded companions. A tense silence filled the cabin. Ray lowered her carbine, breathing hard. Around her lay the stunned forms of the Xylari. None were seriously hurt, but the message was clear. The Queen's protector was not to be trifled with. Ray knelt once more beside Virisha, checking her pulse. The Queen's chest rose in a shallow, steady rhythm. Relief washed through Ray, though her heart ached at Virisha's sacrifice. "You saved us again," Ray whispered, brushing sweat and dust from the Queen's hair. Virisha smiled weakly and closed her eyes for a moment. Outside, the last Xylari pod disengaged, rockets firing to pull away. Ray activated the shuttle's tactical jamming array, blocking the fighter's sensors. Then she guided the vessel back into hyperspace, leaving the hunters lost in the uncharted reaches. The cabin fell silent once more, save for the hum of the reactor. Ray eased Virisha onto the bunk and covered her with a spare blanket. The Queen's breathing slowed, and she lay pale, but alive. Ray sat nearby, holding the Queen's hand. "Rest now," she said softly. "You've earned it." Virisha's fingers twitched around Ray's. "Together we endure," the Queen projected, her voice a faint echo in Ray's mind. In the quiet aftermath, Ray gazed at the distant stars slipping by. She felt the weight of what had passed, the price of mercy, the strength of sacrifice, and the bond that united 2 very different souls. Though the heart of the void still threatened them, Ray knew one truth above all. Where the human soldier stood, the Queen would never stand alone. Captain Syra Ray guided the refurbished flagship through silent stars. The ancient hull had been reborn by human engineers and Zerd survivors alike. Its once broken engines now purred with renewed power, and its worn corridors glowed with fresh lighting. On the bridge, Ray stood beside Queen Virisha, watching a holomap that showed scattered rebel outposts across the sector. "Look," Ray said, pointing to a cluster of dots. "These cells are out there, hiding in asteroid fields and abandoned stations. They believe in our cause." Virisha's markings pulsed with quiet pride. "They fight because of what we did," the Queen projected. "Because you stayed." Below decks, a small army had gathered. Humans in patched uniforms and Zhurd in field armor worked side by side. They repaired weapons, loaded supplies, and shared stories of survival. Some were refugees who had lost homes to the Zalari onslaught. Others were former soldiers who could not stand by while the Void Legion crushed every world in its path. Al had heard the legend, a human soldier who risked everything to save an alien queen. Lieutenant Aaron, a lean engineer with a quick smile, approached Ray in the corridor. "We're ready, Captain," he said, handing over a datapad. "The raid plan is loaded. We strike at Nebula Station 9 in 6 hours." The station was a Zalari war hub, bristling with weapons and guarded by relentless patrols. "It holds the core for their new superweapon," Aaron continued. "We can seize it, arm our own charges, and break their grip on this region." Ray nodded. "Good work. Alert the crews. We move at 0400 hours. Aaron saluted and hurried away to relay the orders. Ray turned to Virisha, whose glowing eyes reflected the flickering holographic grid. "This will be dangerous," she said, softly. "But if we succeed, we'll give others hope." The Queen inclined her head. "Hope is what binds us. Let us be its spark." As the clock counted down, the rebels prepared. In the armory, human and Zhurd fighters checked their gear. Plasma rifles hummed with power, grenades clicked in holsters, and energy shields snapped onto wrists. A human medic tended to minor wounds, while a Zhurd healer applied bioluminescent salves to bruised limbs. Their teamwork felt new and strong. At 0300 hours, the flagship dropped out of stealth near Nebula Station 9. Its sleek shape drifted in the pale light of a distant star. The station loomed ahead, a giant ring of metal with docking bays and gun turrets sprouting like teeth. Ray and Virisha stood on the command deck, flanked by their officers. "Remember," Ray addressed the assembled leaders, "speed and surprise are our allies. We hit the power core, arm the charges, and get out before they know what hit them. No unnecessary risks." A murmur of agreement rose. Virisha reached out, placing her delicate hand on Ray's arm. Together, she telepathically offered, as always. Ray squeezed her hand. "Together," she whispered back. At T-0, rebel shuttles launched in 3 waves. Each shuttle carried a fire team of mixed human and Zhurd fighters. Ray and Virisha boarded the lead craft. As the engines flared, Ray glanced at the Queen's calm face. "Ready?" she asked. Virisha nodded, her markings glowing steady. They dropped through the station's outer perimeter under cover of darkness. Silent doors parted, and they poured into the docking bay. Alarms blared, red lights bathed the walls, and distant speakers spat orders in the harsh Zylari tongue. Ray raised her carbine and sprinted forward. "Move!" she shouted. Behind her, fighters followed without hesitation. They swept through the corridors in tight formation. Zhurd warriors used graceful agility to flank enemy guards, while human sharpshooters covered their advance. Sparks flew as plasma bolts collided with star metal walls. The rebels pressed on, blocking doorways and sealing off reinforcements. Virisha walked at Ray's side, her psionic power pulsing to mask their presence from remote sensors. At last, they reached the power core chamber. The room's dome roof arced high above, centered on a glowing crystal reactor. A ring of conduits carried energy outward like veins. 2 Zylari engineers stood at control panels, startled by the sudden breach. Ray raised her voice. "Hands, where we can see them." The engineers spun around, raising their tools in surrender. A human trooper cuffed them roughly, while a Zhurd guard secured the door. Ray strode to the central console. "Prime the charges," she ordered. Lieutenant Aaron and a small team knelt beside the reactor, attaching explosive nodes at critical junctions. Sparks leapt as they locked each charge in place. Suddenly, station-wide alarms shrieked. The Xylari had been alerted. Bulkheads slammed shut, sealing corridors and flooding blast doors. Outside the core room, dust and debris fell as distant explosions rocked the structure. Ray gritted her teeth. "Time's up," she barked. Virisha pressed a finger to a holopad, initiating a 10-minute countdown. 10 minutes to detonation. The Queen's voice echoed through the room, clear and firm. Ray exchanged a determined look with Virisha. "Let's move," she said. They turned and charged back through the darkened halls, fighting off patrols that tried to block their path. Each doorway became a battle, each corridor a gauntlet. Yet step by step they pushed forward. With 2 minutes left, they burst into the docking bay. Rebel shuttles waited, shields and engines primed. Fighters streamed aboard as Ray and Virisha led the way. The final rebels dove in just as the bay doors sealed. Shuttles roared to life, rocketing away from the station. Through the viewport, the flagship's pilot tracked a safe vector. Ray and Virisha huddled in the cockpit's glow. "Everyone aboard?" Ray called. A chorus of affirmative voices came over the comm. At T-30 seconds, they hit hyperspace. Back inside the station, the core chamber flashed brilliant white. Energy surged, then exploded outward in a wave of light and shock. The station's ring shattered, pieces tumbling into the void. Ray watched the holomap as the grid point for Nebula Station 9 blinked out. On the flagship's bridge, cheers erupted. Human and Zerd alike slapped shoulders and raised triumphant shouts. Ray and Virisha stood together, breathing hard but smiling. The Queen's markings glowed brightly in victory. "You have given many hope tonight," Virisha projected softly. Ray reached for the Queen's hand. "And you've given me strength," she replied. As the rebels celebrated, Ray knew that this was more than a raid. It was the birth of a true alliance, one forged in battle, sealed by sacrifice, and strengthened by trust. And together, they would carry this spark of rebellion to the farthest stars. The recycled flagship glided into orbit above Virisha's homeworld, crystalline towers glinting below through thinning clouds. Captain Sarah Ray stood at the command rail, her uniform brushed clean but the lines of fatigue still visible on her face. At her side, Queen Virisha gazed down at the familiar landscapes of green plains and silver rivers. For both of them, this moment burned with promise. The spark of hope they had carried through dark voids now shone brilliantly on the world they had fought to save. In the palace's shattered courtyard, survivors gathered with cautious joy. Humans and Zerd embraced beneath torn banners that once proclaimed vengeance. Now they bore new symbols, 2 hands clasped over a star, the emblem of their alliance. Around them, engineers and farmers, soldiers and scholars, shared water and stories. Where once suspicion had ruled, warmth bloomed like spring flowers. News of the Allied victory at Nebula Station 9 had spread quickly, and many had come to greet the returning heroes. Ray and Virisha descended the palace steps together, flanked by a guard formed of both species. The crowd fell silent as they approached the dais before the ruined throne. Sunlight lit the broken pillars, sending shafts of light onto the pair. Virisha's bioluminescent markings brightened in greeting, while Ray's eyes shone with fierce pride. Together they stood before the crowd, a soldier and a sovereign, bound by shared sacrifice. Queen Virisha raised her hand, and her clear voice carried across the hush. "People of Zerd and of humanity," she began. "We have endured loss and fear. We have walked through darkness and found each other's hearts. Today we choose to stand not as 2 races, but as one people." A murmur of agreement rose, mixing with soft cheers. Ray stepped forward, lifting her carbine in salute. "We fight not for vengeance," she added, her voice strong yet gentle, "but for a future where every life matters. We fight for peace." As they spoke, the royal artisans unfurled a new banner, white cloth stitched with red and blue threads that formed the shared star emblem. A young human boy and a Zerd girl carried the banner to the throne's base, placing it upon the stone. The crowd erupted in applause, clapping and stamping in celebration. A band of musicians struck up a melody that blended human drums and Zerd choral notes, filling the air with hopeful harmony. Later, in the grand hall-turned-council chamber, Ray and Virisha presided over the first meeting of the United Council. Delegates from both species sat in a wide circle around a polished table. They spoke of rebuilding cities, of sharing technology and medicine, of welcoming other worlds into their alliance. When disagreements arose, Ray reminded them gently of their journey. We chose cooperation over fear. Virisha reminded them of their shared prophecy. We stand as one to light the path forward. With each voice heard, their bond grew stronger. Outside the palace, shuttles arrived bearing more refugees, some human, some Zerd, all seeking a safe place. Workers unloaded supplies and erected shelters. Engineers repaired broken power grids, while gardeners planted groves in once barren fields. Children chased each other through the corridors of half-restored towers, their laughter drifting on the wind. Ray walked among them, offering water to a tired engineer and sharing a nod with a Zerd healer tending a wounded bird. Every small act of kindness wove the two peoples more tightly together. As evening fell, Ray and Virisha returned to the balcony overlooking the city. Twin moons rose in the violet sky, and lanterns lit the streets below. The queen placed her slender hand on Ray's shoulder. "We have come far, human soldier," she projected softly. Ray smiled, her gaze fixed on the glowing city. "We have," she replied aloud. "And tomorrow, we build even more." In the distance, a lone Xylari patrol swept past the planet's atmosphere, an ever-present reminder that their peace must be defended. But tonight, on this shared world, hope held stronger than fear. High above the palace, the shared banner fluttered in the gentle breeze. On the balcony, a soldier and a sovereign raised their hands together, the symbol of unity shining behind them. In that moment, the dawn broke not just for a single species or a single planet, but for all who dared to believe that peace could outshine the void. And so began the age of the shared throne, an era born of sacrifice, trust, and the unyielding courage of those who stood side by side.